At the family dinner, they served my sister's kids first, and mine only scraps. That very night, I booked a luxury cruise for all of us, except for them. I never thought the sound of an empty plate could hurt as much as a slap in the face. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. And if you, for a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. It was Sunday afternoon at my sister Claire's house in Pasadena, California. The dining room table was perfectly set with her cream-colored embroidered tablecloth, the porcelain dishes she inherited from our grandmother, and the crystal glasses she only brought out for special occasions. The aroma of roast turkey filled the entire house, mingling with the scent of freshly baked dinner rolls and the coffee bubbling in the pot. It was our mother's 70th birthday, and as usual, Claire had organized everything. I arrived promptly at 3 in the afternoon with my 2 children, Ethan, 16, and Sophia, 14. We had traveled for an hour and a half on the train from East LA, where we rent a small 2-bedroom apartment that is all I can afford on my salary as a seamstress in a downtown garment factory. My children looked impeccable. I had ironed their best shirts the night before, and Sophia wore the blue dress I bought her 6 months ago at a Ross, still almost new because she only wears it for these family gatherings. Ethan's hair was neatly combed with gel, though you could tell his shoes already needed new soles. Claire's house always made me feel small. 2 stories, a garden with purple bougainvillea, a living room with Italian leather furniture that her husband Richard bought when his construction supply business started to thrive. On the walls hung silver-framed family photographs, their children Dylan and Jenna at their graduations, their vacations in Hawaii, Jenna's wedding last year at a ballroom in Beverly Hills. "Grace, so glad you made it," Claire greeted me with her perfect smile, the one that always seemed rehearsed. She wore a salmon-colored dress that highlighted her still slender figure at 52, and pearl earrings that shone under the dining room light. My children's cousins were already there. Dylan, 18, was showing off his latest model iPhone while telling anyone who would listen about his acceptance into USC to study business administration. Jenna had come with her husband Mark and their 8-month-old baby, who slept soundly in a stroller that cost more than my salary for 3 months. My children sat at the end of the table, as always. Not because anyone told them to directly, but because that's how it had always been, since they were little. It was a kind of unspoken rule. Claire's children occupied the places of honor near Mom, and we took what was left. When Claire began to serve, the usual ritual repeated with the precision of a well-rehearsed play. First, Mom received her plate with the best piece of turkey, generous spoonfuls of gravy, well-seasoned rice pilaf, green bean casserole with crispy onions, and warm rolls wrapped in an embroidered napkin. Next was Dylan. His plate was abundant. A golden brown turkey leg, gravy spilling over the edges, rice decorated with peas and carrots, a mountain of green beans topped with extra cheese. Claire smiled at him as she adjusted his napkin. "So you have strength for college, my love," she said, tenderly stroking his head. It was Jenna's turn, and then Mark, who received a second helping without even asking. Richard, Claire's husband, was also served generously, and even the baby got his special puree in a little Disney dish that Claire had bought especially for him. When it was finally my children's turn, Claire lifted the roasting pan and tilted it. There were only a few scraps left at the bottom, the ones that stick and are more bone than meat. The last bits of turkey were mainly skin and carcass. "Oh, shoot," Claire sighed with that voice she used when she wanted to seem sorry but wasn't really. "There's almost nothing left. I didn't calculate the portions well." She served Ethan 2 meager spoonfuls of gravy with a piece of turkey that was all bone and gristle. Sophia got even less, a spoonful of watery mashed potatoes and a bit of rice that had already gone cold. The rolls she gave them were hard, the ones left at the bottom of the basket. "But it's good enough for their age, right?" Claire added, looking at me as if expecting me to confirm that my children didn't need to eat so much. Besides, kids these days are so overweight. It's good for them to eat less. I felt my throat go dry. My children were hungry. I knew because they had eaten an early, light breakfast, so as not to arrive full at their aunt's house. Sophia looked at her plate with those big eyes she gets when she's sad but trying not to cry. Ethan, my proud boy, smiled as if nothing was wrong, and said to his aunt, "It's perfect, Aunt Claire, thank you very much." But I saw how his hands trembled slightly when he picked up his fork. The conversation flowed animatedly around the table. Dylan talked about his plans to study a semester in Spain. Jenna showed photos of the new house they were buying in Calabasas, and Richard boasted about the $1 million contract he had just secured to build a shopping center in Irvine. No one asked about our lives. No one asked Ethan about his grades, which are excellent despite him studying at a public high school and working on weekends as a bagger at a supermarket to help me with expenses. No one asked Sophia about the speech competition she won last month, or about her dreams of studying veterinary medicine. It was as if we were ghosts sitting at that table, present but not really there. When Claire brought out the cake, the situation became even more humiliating. It was a beautiful multi-layered chocolate cake decorated with buttercream flowers and a plaque that said, "Happy 70th birthday, Grandma." She began to cut generous slices for everyone, except for us. "For Grace and the kids, just little slivers," she announced, cutting 3 pieces that looked like samples. "It's very rich, you know. We don't want you getting sick to your stomach." My children received their microscopic portions of cake and ate them in silence, savoring every crumb as if it were the most delicious thing in the world. But I knew them. I knew they were still hungry. I knew they would go to bed that night with an empty stomach while their cousins posted photos of this wonderful family meal on social media. After dinner, while Claire organized the family photo session in the living room, I stayed in the kitchen helping to wash the dishes. It was my usual role, the helpful sister who cleaned up while the others enjoyed themselves. My hands trembled as I scrubbed the dirty plates. Every piece of food I scraped off reminded me of what my children hadn't been able to eat. Every laugh that came from the living room reminded me of conversations from which we had been excluded. 58 years, almost 6 decades of life, and they still treated me like the younger sister who should be grateful for the crumbs. That night, on the train back home, Sophia finally fell asleep, leaning on my shoulder. Ethan looked out the window with that expression he gets when he's trying to be strong. I stroked my daughter's hair and felt something inside me finally breaking for good. But it wasn't my heart that was breaking. It was my patience. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed up until 4 in the morning, sitting at the small kitchen table where we eat every day, looking at the photographs I kept in a shoebox. Photos that told the story of all the sacrifices I had made for my family over the last 20 years. There was the first one, me with my late husband Michael and Claire, the day we bought the land where her 2-story house now stands. It was 1998. And I was just 32. I had just sold the only inheritance my father had left me, a small lot in the San Fernando Valley that I had planned to save for my children. But Claire cried every night because she and Richard had nowhere to live after getting married. "Please, Grace," she had pleaded that afternoon, taking my hands in Mom's kitchen. "You know Richard is going to make it big with his business. When things get better, we'll pay you back everything with interest. Sister's honor." I sold my land for $20,000 and gave them the entire amount. I never saw a dollar back. Not even when Richard started making so much money that he bought a new SUV every 2 years. In another photograph, I was holding Dylan when he was 3. Claire had decided to go back to work as an executive assistant and needed someone to watch her son. "I can't afford an expensive daycare, and you work from home with your sewing," she had told me. "Besides, he's your nephew. Aunts are supposed to help." For 2 full years, Monday through Friday, Dylan had breakfast, lunch, and dinner at my table. I bought him clothes, toys, medicine when he got sick. I taught him to talk, to walk, to use the potty. When Claire came to pick him up at night, he would cry because he didn't want to leave. Half of my income went to my nephew's expenses, but I never complained. I thought Claire would remember it when I needed help. More photos followed. Me at the hospital when Jenna was born, with a bag full of diapers, formula, and clothes I had bought with my savings because the delivery costs had been very high. Me preparing the food for Jenna's baptism in my apartment because Claire didn't have time to cook for so many people. Me sewing Jenna's first communion dress without charging a cent, working until 2 in the morning for a full week to make it perfect. But the photo that hurt the most was from 5 years ago. I was in the hospital, hooked up to IVs, my face swollen and my eyes red. I had a severe allergic reaction after trying a new medication for the arthritis that had developed from so many years of hunching over a sewing machine. The doctors told me I had been in real danger, that I could have gone into anaphylactic shock. Ethan and Sophia, who were then 11 and 9, were home alone for 3 days because no family member could come to watch them. Claire had told me over the phone, "Oh, sis, I'd love to help, but we're taking the kids to Hawaii. We already paid for the hotel. I'm sure your kids will be fine on their own. They're old enough now." Richard didn't even answer my calls. Mom said she was too squeamish to see sick people in the hospital. My children ate ramen noodles for those 3 days. Ethan confessed years later that he had cried every night, thinking I was going to die and they would be left orphans. While Claire was posting pictures of her beach vacation, my children were sleeping huddled together in my bed, waiting for me to come back from the hospital. I put the photographs away and walked to the refrigerator. Inside were day-old tortillas, a bit of beans I had cooked on Saturday, and 2 eggs I was saving for tomorrow's breakfast. I mentally compared that to the abundant table we had seen that day at Claire's house. The prosciutto that Richard sliced as if it were nothing, the imported cheeses that Jenna spread on expensive crackers, the bottles of red wine they had opened just for the meal. The difference wasn't just in the money. It was in the consideration, in the respect, in the simple act of serving food with love instead of serving leftovers with disdain. I went back to the shoebox and pulled out another photo that pierced my heart like a knife. It was from Sophia's Sweet 16, just 6 months ago. I had saved all year to throw her a small but nice party. I rented the community room in our apartment complex, hired a small band, and had a pink dress made that she had picked out from a magazine. I invited the whole family, including Claire and hers, of course. I bought food for 50 people, even though I knew only about 30 would come. I wanted there to be leftovers, for no one to leave my daughter's party hungry. Claire arrived 2 hours late, just as we were cutting the cake. "Oh, sorry, sis. We got held up buying Jenna's gift for tomorrow. You know, her party is at the country club and we had to find something special. She stayed for barely 40 minutes. She didn't touch the food, said they had already eaten something. She didn't dance, didn't sing happy birthday, didn't participate in the games. She spent the whole time answering her phone and talking about the preparations for her own daughter's party. When they left, Sophia asked me, 'Mom, why did Aunt Claire seem bored at my party?' I didn't know what to tell her. How was I going to explain to my 15-year-old girl that to her aunt, we were a social obligation, not family? A month later, the invitation for Jenna's Sweet 16 arrived. Glossy cardstock, gold lettering, velvet envelope. The party would be in one of the most expensive ballrooms in Beverly Hills, with a live band, a DJ, and a 3-course menu. The problem was that each adult guest was asked to contribute $100 to help cover costs. The teenage guests had to bring a gift from a specific registry at Nordstrom, where the cheapest item cost $80. $100 was exactly what I earned in a full week of sewing, and $80 was what I spent on groceries for the entire month. I called Claire. "Sis, the contribution is a bit difficult. Isn't there another way to participate? I can help with the food, or make something." Her response was like a slap. "Oh, Grace, don't worry. If you can't come, it's no big deal. We understand that not everyone has the same means. But we can't make exceptions because then everyone will want one." We didn't go to Jenna's party. That night, while my family enjoyed their $500 a plate celebration, I took my children to the Santa Monica Pier. We bought corn dogs for a few dollars each and sat on the steps to watch the street performers. Sophia told me, "This is nicer than any party, Mom." But I knew she was trying to comfort me, just like she always did when our financial reality excluded us from family plans. The most recent photo in the box was from 3 months ago. I was at the hospital again, this time with Mom when she was diagnosed with diabetes. For 4 days I was there, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair, buying all her medications, talking to doctors, filling out insurance paperwork. Claire showed up on the last day when Mom was already being discharged. "Oh, good, she's okay. I couldn't come sooner because Richard is stressed with work and needs me at home to take care of him." Mom recovered completely, and since then I've been in charge of taking her to her medical appointments, buying her medications, preparing her special sugar-free meals. Every Tuesday and Friday, I take 2 buses to get from East LA to Alhambra, where Mom lives, and another 2 to get back. That's 4 hours on public transport that I pay for out of my own pocket. Claire lives 20 minutes from Mom. She drives a brand new SUV, but she doesn't have time to care for her. I closed the shoebox and poured myself a glass of lukewarm water. My hands were shaking not from cold, but from rage. A silent rage that had been growing for years, feeding on every slight, every oversight, every moment my generosity had been taken for granted. When had I started to believe I deserved so little? At what point had I accepted that my role in this family was to give, to serve, to sacrifice, and never receive anything in return except crumbs of respect? I looked towards the room where my children were sleeping. Ethan was snoring softly, one of his high school textbooks open on his chest. Sophia had fallen asleep, hugging her pillow, with that small smile that appears when she's having happy dreams. They deserved more. They deserved to be treated with dignity. They deserved to arrive at a family table and receive the best piece of turkey. They deserved for their achievements to be celebrated, for their dreams to be heard, for their presence to be valued. And I deserved more, too. For the first time in 20 years, I allowed myself to feel the full force of my anger, without apologies, without justifications, without thinking about keeping the family peace. It was my turn to be selfish. It was my turn to put my children and myself first. I picked up my cell phone and opened the internet browser. My fingers, which knew by heart the cost of every dollar I spent, began to type something I had never searched for before: cheap, all-inclusive cruises. What I discovered that night browsing the internet changed my life forever, but not because of the cruise deals I found, but because of something much more devastating that appeared on my screen when I wasn't even looking for it. It was 2 a.m. when I decided to check Facebook before going to bed. I usually only went on to see photos my old high school classmates posted, but that night, something prompted me to look up Claire's profile. What I saw made my blood run cold. Claire had uploaded a complete album of photos from that day's family dinner. The pictures showed the abundant table, the smiles, the hugs with Mom. But what shattered me were the captions she herself had written under each image. On a photo where she appeared serving the plates, she wrote, "It's always a challenge to calculate food when the whole family comes over. Some people show up expecting a handout. But hey, Christian charity above all." In another photo, where Dylan was seen cutting his slice of cake, she had commented, "My son happy at Grandma's birthday. Luckily, well-behaved kids know how to act at the table. Not like some others, you know." But the comment that broke my soul in two was on a group photo where we did not appear. The real family, all together. Too bad we always have to include certain elements who only show up to take and never contribute anything. My kids deserve better role models, but you can't choose your poor relatives. Under that comment, there was a conversation between Claire and her friends that made me tremble with rage. Her friend Rebecca had written, "Ugh, girl, did you have to put up with your freeloader sister again?" Claire replied, "Don't even get me started. She showed up with her starving kids as usual. I think she doesn't feed them at home so they can stuff themselves here. The poor things look like refugees." Another friend, Linda, commented, "So why don't you say something? I already put a stop to my parasitic sister-in-law." Claire's response was the final stab. "I just feel bad for her. My sister never knew how to make something of herself. She settled for a construction worker who didn't even have health insurance, and now she lives off the little sewing she does. But it's not my kids' fault their aunt is a failure. That's why we're raising them not to end up like her." I read those comments 5 times, hoping the words would change, that I had misunderstood something. But no. Claire, my sister, the woman for whom I had sold my land, for whom I had cared for her children for free for years, to whom I had given all my emotional and financial support when she needed it, had called me an element, a parasite, and a failure in front of all her friends. I took screenshots of everything. My hands were shaking so much I had to try several times before I managed to save the images. Then I closed the computer and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay awake until the sun came up, feeling as if something vital had been ripped from my chest. The following week was horrible. I didn't say anything to Claire about what I had read, but every time I saw her name on my phone, I felt nauseous. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't reply to her texts asking if I was okay. On Friday morning, while sewing a prom dress for a neighbor, I received a confusing call. It was from an event planner at a party hall. "Mrs. Grace Morales? This is Patricia from the Sunflower Ballroom. I'm calling because your sister Claire canceled the event she had scheduled for August 15th and asked me to let you know." "What event?" I asked, not understanding at all. "The surprise party for your 59th birthday. Your sister had booked the hall 3 months ago, but she called me yesterday saying it was all canceled because you've been acting strange lately, and it was better not to do anything for you." The dress fell from my hands. Claire had been planning a surprise party for me. For 3 months, she had been organizing something special for my birthday. The same birthday I had spent alone for the past 5 years because everyone forgot. "Can I ask what kind of event it was?" I said to Patricia, my voice breaking. "Well, your sister had requested simple decorations, nothing too expensive. She was going to bring homemade food. She told me you preferred humble things. She had only invited about 15 people. She asked that it not be anything fancy, because you would feel uncomfortable with luxury." After hanging up, I sat at my sewing machine for an hour, trying to process what I had just heard. Claire had remembered my birthday. She had planned something for me. But after seeing my lack of response, which she interpreted as me acting strange, she had decided to cancel everything. Strange? Was acting strange not answering immediately when she called? Was it not running to ask what she needed every time I suspected something was bothering her? That same day, when I went to pick up Sophia from school, I ran into Martha, the mother of one of her classmates. Martha cleaned offices at night, just as I had done years ago when Michael died. "Hey, Grace," she said, approaching with a worried look. "Is everything okay at home? I saw your sister Claire at the supermarket yesterday, and she asked me if I knew if you were in some kind of trouble." "In trouble? What kind of trouble?" "Well, she said you've been very distant, that you weren't answering your phone, and that maybe you had debts or something. She asked me if Sophia had mentioned any money problems at home at school." Martha looked at me with that expression people get when they don't know whether to meddle in other people's affairs. She also asked if it was true that Ethan had dropped out of school to work. I told her no, that your son is still studying and just working on weekends. But she seemed very worried, as if she knew something I didn't. When I got home that afternoon, I found my children doing their homework at the kitchen table. I watched them for a few minutes without them noticing. Ethan was helping Sophia with math, patiently explaining how to solve the equations. Sophia was telling him about a play they were preparing at school, where she had gotten the lead role. They were extraordinary children. Smart, hardworking, respectful, full of dreams and goals. Ethan wanted to study civil engineering, just as his father had wanted to before necessity forced him to work in construction. Sophia dreamed of being a veterinarian and having a clinic for abandoned animals. How dare Claire treat them as if they were a burden? How dare she talk about them as if they were refugees, or as if I were a bad mother for not being able to give them the luxuries she gave her children? That night, after they went to bed, I opened Facebook again. This time, I checked Claire's entire profile, not just the recent photos. I found something that tore me to pieces. 2 years ago, when Ethan won first place in the state math Olympiad, I had posted a photo of him with his medal. I was so proud that I tagged the whole family, including Claire. Claire had liked the photo, but then I found a comment she had made on her friend Rebecca's profile that same day. "My sister-in-law is bragging that her son won a little medal in math. Poor woman. She doesn't know those contests are for public schools because the private schools don't even bother participating. It's like bragging you won a race where you were the only one running." I scrolled further down and found another devastating comment. It was from when Sophia had been chosen for the color guard at her middle school. I had posted a photo of the ceremony, with my girl standing firm, serious, and proud. Claire had commented privately to a friend, "It's nice that public schools still do those things. At Jenna's school, they don't waste time with ceremonies that are so folksy." Each discovery was like a slap in the face. For years, Claire had been feigning pride in my children's accomplishments while belittling them behind their backs. She had been simulating support for me while describing me as a failure to her friends. But the worst came at the end, when I found a conversation on her wall from 6 months ago, right after I had taken care of Mom in the hospital. Her friend Linda had asked, "How's your mom doing after the diabetes scare?" Claire replied, "Better now, thanks. My sister took care of everything because you know how those spinsters with no life of their own are. They need to feel useful. It was complicated for me because Richard and I have a very busy social calendar. A spinster with no life of her own, 20 years a widow, raising my children alone, working double shifts to give them the best I could, caring for my sick mother, supporting my family in every crisis. And to Claire, I was a spinster with no life of her own who needed to feel useful." I closed the computer and walked to the window of my small living room. Outside, Los Angeles was still awake. The city lights twinkled like terrestrial stars, and the constant hum of traffic reminded me that the world kept spinning even though mine had stopped. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something I had never before allowed to grow inside me. Pure hatred for my sister. Not sadness, not disappointment, not anger. Hatred. And with that hatred came a clarity that frightened me with its intensity. I was no longer going to be the sister who put up with everything to keep the family together. I was no longer going to allow my children to be treated like second-class citizens in their own family. I was no longer going to accept crumbs of respect from people who saw me as a burden. I picked up my phone and searched for cruise deals again. But this time, I wasn't looking for a cheap vacation. I was looking for revenge. For 3 days, I only left the house when absolutely necessary. I told my kids I had a bit of a stomach bug. But the truth was, I was planning something I had never considered in my life. How to teach my family a lesson they would never forget. On Monday morning, while Ethan and Sophia were at school, I walked to the Bank of America on the corner. I brought all my savings account paperwork, including the passbook where I had been saving, dollar by dollar, for the last 8 years for my children's future. The teller, a young woman named Andrea who knew me from my many small deposits, greeted me with a smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Morales. How are you? Haven't seen you in a while." "Hi, Andrea. I'm here to check my total balance. I want to know exactly how much I have saved." Andrea typed on her computer and then looked at me, surprised. "Ma'am, you have $8,650 in your savings account. That's a very good amount. Congratulations." Not many people manage to save that much working for themselves. $8,750. 8 years of depositing $50 a month when I could, $100 when there was extra work, sometimes only $20 when things were tight. Money I had saved imagining it would one day go toward Ethan's college, or a medical emergency, or for when I finally got old and couldn't work anymore. "Andrea, I have a question. If I wanted to spend, say, $6,000 on something, how long would it take me to save that amount again?" "Well, it depends, ma'am. If you keep saving as you have been, it would be about 5 or 6 years. But may I ask what it's for? Maybe I can advise you on whether it's a good idea or not." I lied. I told her I was thinking of remodeling the apartment, putting in new floors and redoing the kitchen. Andrea nodded and explained some loan options. But I wasn't listening anymore. $6,000 was exactly what I needed for what I had in mind. That afternoon, I went to the travel agency in the local shopping plaza. I had never set foot in a travel agency in my life. I always thought those places were for people like Claire, people who could afford to plan vacations without worrying about every dollar spent. The agent, an elegant woman in her 40s, greeted me with professional kindness. "Good afternoon. How can I help you? I want information on cruises." "For 4 people. All-inclusive, food, lodging, entertainment." "Perfect. And for when would the trip be?" "For next week." The woman looked at me, surprised. "Next week?" "Ma'am, cruises are usually booked months in advance. Last-minute prices are often very high, and it's difficult to find availability for 4 people together." "The price doesn't matter," I said, and for the first time in my life, those words came out of my mouth with complete confidence. "I want the best you have available." For the next hour, the agent showed me options I had never dreamed of. Cruises through the Mexican Riviera, with stops in Cabo San Lucas and Puerto Vallarta. Cabins with private balconies, specialty restaurants, Broadway-style shows, spas, casinos, pools with water slides, activities for all ages. "This is our premium package," she said, showing me a brochure filled with spectacular photos. "It leaves from Long Beach, 7 days, 6 nights, It includes all meals, unlimited drinks, entertainment, and excursions in each port. For 4 people, it would be $6,200. $6,200. More than I earned in 6 months. More than I had spent on clothes for my children in the last 3 years. Enough money to pay for Ethan's tuition at a state university for a full year. Do you have availability for this weekend? Let me check. Yes, I have 4 spots available. 2 double cabins with balconies. But I need the full names and passport numbers of all the travelers to make the reservation. The names are Grace Morales, Ethan Morales, Sophia Morales, and Hope Miller. Hope was my 68-year-old neighbor, an extraordinary woman who had been a teacher her whole life and had never married. When Michael died and I had to work night shifts, Hope would stay with my children without charging me a cent. When I got sick from the allergy, she was the only one who came to the hospital to keep me company. When Ethan needed help with advanced math, Hope gave him free lessons in the afternoons. She was the only person in the world, besides my children, who had given me unconditional love. Perfect. And the form of payment? Cash. In full. Right now. The agent looked at me as if I were from another planet. Ma'am, that's over $6,000. People usually pay with a credit card or set up a payment plan. I don't have a credit card. And I don't want a payment plan. I want to pay for it all today. I left the agency with 4 cruise passes in a sleek folder. I also left with my heart beating so hard I thought I was going to have a heart attack right there in the parking lot. What had I done? I had just spent my entire adult life savings on a 1-week vacation. I had compromised my children's college fund, jeopardized my financial security, done the exact opposite of what a responsible mother would do in my situation, and I felt absolutely free. That night, after dinner, I told my children to sit in the living room because I had something important to tell them. "Are you okay, Mom?" Sophia asked, with that intuition women have for sensing when something big is about to happen. "I'm perfectly fine. In fact, I'm better than I've been in years." I took out the folder from the travel agency and placed the tickets on the coffee table. On Friday, we're going on a cruise. The 4 of us. You 2, me, and Mrs. Hope. Ethan picked up one of the tickets and read it with his mouth open. "Mom, this is so expensive. How are you going to pay for this?" "It's already paid for. With my savings." "With your savings?" Sophia looked at me, horrified. "Mom, that money was for emergencies. It was for my college, for when you get sick, for—" "It was my money," I interrupted her, with a firmness I had never used with my children before. "And I decided to spend it on something we deserve." I explained that I would talk to their school principals to excuse their absence for a week, that I had already requested time off from my sewing work, that everything was arranged. "But Mom," Ethan insisted, "what if something happens? What if we need money for a real emergency?" "Son, for 18 years I have been preparing for emergencies that never come, saving for futures that never materialize, denying myself pleasures to give them to others who don't even value them." I sat between them on the couch. "Do you know what the real emergency is? That we are living as if we are less important than the rest of our family. That you are growing up thinking you deserve the leftovers from the table while your cousins eat the best pieces." I told them about Claire's comments on Facebook, about the canceled party, about all the years I had been treated like a second-class citizen by my own sister. "It's time for you to learn something important about life," I told them, taking their hands. "No one will value you if you don't value yourselves first. No one will respect you if you don't demand respect. And no one will treat you like important people if you keep acting like you're a burden." Sophia started to cry, but not from sadness. "Mom, are we really going on a cruise? Like the ones in the movies?" "Really, my love. With fancy restaurants, shows every night, pools, beaches, all inclusive, and most importantly, without having to thank anyone for anything." Ethan kept looking at the tickets as if he couldn't believe they were real. "And what is Aunt Claire going to say when she finds out?" For the first time in 20 years, I smiled with a wickedness I didn't know I had. "She's going to find out exactly when I want her to, and in the way I decide." The next day, Wednesday, I called Hope and asked her to come over for coffee. When I showed her the tickets, the poor woman almost fainted. "Grace, dear, I can't accept this. It's too much money. Besides, I don't even have proper clothes for a cruise. Hope, you were more of a mother to my children than my own sister has ever been. You deserve this, and so much more. We spent the whole afternoon planning what to pack, what last-minute clothes to buy, how to organize everything for the trip. Hope was nervous but excited as a child. On Thursday night, after my children were asleep, I picked up my phone and started writing a message in the family group chat. A message that was going to change everything forever. But before sending it, I dialed Claire's number. Grace? Hi, sis. You had me worried. I haven't heard from you in days. Hi, Claire. I'm calling to let you know that we're leaving on a trip tomorrow morning, for a whole week. A trip? Where? With what money? On a cruise to the Mexican Riviera, with my savings. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Grace, are you sure that's wise? I mean, with your financial situation. My financial situation allows me to pay for a luxury cruise for 4 people, all inclusive. For 4 people? Who else is going with you? My children and my neighbor, Hope, the woman who has actually been there for me when I needed her. Another silence. Longer this time. Grace, are you upset about something? I feel like you've been strange since Sunday. I'm not upset, Claire. I'm free. And I hung up the phone. It was the first time in my life I had ever hung up on my sister, and it felt absolutely wonderful. On Friday at 5 in the morning, a taxi picked us up at our apartment building. Ethan and Sophia carried their cheap little suitcases, but they were full of excitement. Hope had been up for 2 hours getting ready and was wearing a navy blue dress she had bought especially for the occasion at a local flea market. During the ride to the Long Beach cruise terminal, my children couldn't stop looking out the windows, as if it were the first time they were seeing Los Angeles at dawn. And maybe it was the first time they were seeing it with the eyes of people going on vacation, not people rushing to work or school. At the terminal, while waiting to board, I decided it was the perfect moment to send the message I had been preparing for days. I took out my phone and opened the family group chat, the group where I usually only read about others' plans, where I never had anything exciting to share. First, I uploaded a photo of our 4 cruise passes on a table, looking sleek and expensive. Then I wrote, "Good morning, family. Just sharing that we're off on a week's vacation, an all-inclusive cruise on the Mexican Riviera. My children are going to see the ocean for the first time. Hope, my neighbor and true friend, is coming with us because she deserves it after so many years of supporting us without asking for anything in return. We won't be available by phone until next Friday. When we get back, we'll have lots of beautiful stories to tell. But we'll only tell them to those who are genuinely happy for our happiness. Have a great week." "We know we will." I sent the message and immediately turned off my phone. I didn't want to read the responses until I was already on the ship, surrounded by the blue ocean, with a drink in my hand and my children smiling without a care in the world. The moment we saw the ship was magical. It was gigantic. 12 decks high. Thousands of cabins, restaurants, theaters, pools, shops. It was like a floating city, full of people from all over the world who had come to have a good time without asking anyone's permission. Our cabins were on the 9th deck, with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. When we opened the sliding doors and stepped out, the sea breeze tousled our hair as we looked at the turquoise water stretching to the horizon. "Mom," Sophia said, her eyes full of tears, "this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life." The first night, we dined in the ship's main dining room. Hope wore her blue dress and a pair of pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. My children had put on their best clothes, and Ethan had even styled his hair with gel. The waiter, a young man from California named Rodrigo, treated us like VIP guests. He explained every dish on the menu, recommended wines, and served us with a genuine smile I had never seen directed at us in any family gathering. "Is this your first cruise?" Rodrigo asked as he served the appetizers. "Yes," Sophia replied. "It's our first time on a real vacation." "How exciting! You're going to have an incredible time. This ship has everything. Broadway-style shows, dance classes, a casino, a spa, excursions at every port. You won't want to go back to land." During dinner, I noticed something I had never experienced before. No one looked at us with pity. No one whispered comments about our simple clothes or our common manners. We were in a place where everyone had paid to be there, where everyone had the same right to enjoy themselves, where the money of a seamstress from East LA was worth exactly the same as the money of any executive from Beverly Hills. After dinner, we went to the theater to see a musical. The lights, the music, the professional dancers. It was like being inside a movie. Hope clapped with contagious excitement, and Ethan recorded videos on his phone so he would never forget that night. When we returned to our cabins, it was already 11 o'clock. I decided to turn on my phone to see what had happened in the family group chat during the day. I had 47 unread messages. The first ones were of surprise. Mom had written, "Are you really on a cruise? How did you get the money for that, dear?" Richard had posted, "Wow, that looks expensive. Got a new business, sister-in-law?" But then the typical messages from Claire started. "Grace, I hope you haven't gotten into financial trouble over this. You know how you are with finances. I'm worried you're spending money you don't have. The children need stability, not adventures. If you needed a break, you could have just come to my house for a few days. There was no need to go into debt." And the message that made my blood boil. Hope must be very uncomfortable in an environment that isn't for people of her social class. The poor thing. I read all the messages without replying to any of them. Then I went out onto my balcony and poured myself a glass of wine I had brought from the restaurant. It was midnight. The ship was sailing smoothly over the dark waters of the Pacific, and in the distance you could see the lights of the coastline. The warm wind blew through my hair as I thought about everything that had changed in my life in just 1 week. I took a picture of the view from my balcony, the infinite sea under the moonlight, my glass of wine in the foreground, my bare feet propped up on the railing. I wrote a new message in the family group chat. Time to clear some things up. This cruise didn't cost me a single borrowed dollar. I paid for it with my savings. Money I gathered working 18-hour days for 8 years. Money I could have spent on medical emergencies, private tuition for my kids, or home renovations. But I decided to spend it on something my family and I deserved. To feel valued, respected, and well-treated. Something we apparently couldn't find at family gatherings. Hope is more comfortable here than at any family meal where you made comments about certain elements who didn't contribute anything. My children are learning what it feels like to be served with love, not pity. They are learning they deserve the best pieces of food, not the scraps. And I am remembering what it feels like to be treated as an important person, not as a sister who needs charity. When we return on Friday, we are going to have a very serious conversation about what you want our family relationship to be from now on. Because this trip taught me something I should never have forgotten. If you want respect, you first have to respect yourself. Have a good week. We know we're having an amazing one. I sent the message and turned my phone off again. The next 5 days were the happiest of my adult life. In Cabo San Lucas, Sophia went parasailing over the turquoise sea while I watched from the beach. My heart in my throat, but proud to see my girl so brave. Ethan learned to snorkel and saw colorful tropical fish he had only seen in documentaries. In Puerto Vallarta, Hope and I took a catamaran tour where they served us fresh lobster and taught us to dance salsa. Hope danced as if she were 20. Laughing until her cheeks ached. Every night we dined in different restaurants on the ship. Italian, Japanese, French, gourmet Mexican. The waiters knew us by name and always gave us the best tables. Ethan tried sushi for the first time and decided he wanted to learn how to make it. Sophia discovered she loved theater after watching 3 different shows. Hope learned to play blackjack in the casino and won $200, which she saved as her first lucky money. But the most important thing that happened that week wasn't the excursions or the fancy meals. It was that my children started to walk differently, with their heads held high, with confident smiles, like people who knew they deserved to be there, like people who had learned that their worth didn't depend on the approval of others. On the last night of the cruise, as we were having dinner at the ship's French restaurant, Sophia took my hand. "Mom, thank you for teaching us that we deserve nice things." Ethan nodded. "I'm never going to let anyone treat us like we're less important again." Hope raised her glass of champagne. "To Grace, the bravest woman I know, the woman who got tired of eating crumbs and decided to serve herself the whole banquet." That night, as the ship sailed back to Long Beach, I stayed awake on my balcony until I saw the sunrise. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't afraid of the future. because I had learned something that would change my life forever. When a woman decides to value herself, the whole world has to adjust to that new reality. And my family was about to find out exactly what that meant. On Friday afternoon, when we returned, I found 127 messages on my phone, but I didn't read them at the terminal. Not in the taxi home either. I waited until my children had gone to sleep. After telling everyone in the neighborhood about their cruise adventure, showing photos and souvenirs like little ambassadors of happiness, when I finally opened the group chat, what I found confirmed that my message had achieved exactly what I wanted: to jolt my family out of their comfortable routine of mistreating me without consequences. Claire had written entire paragraphs. "Grace, I don't understand why you're attacking the family. We have always supported you. If you felt there was a problem, you could have spoken to me privately instead of making this dramatic show in front of everyone. It hurts me so much that you think we don't value you. Maybe there are misunderstandings, but you fix those by talking, not by spending money like crazy and throwing public tantrums. Mom is very worried about your attitude. She says she doesn't recognize you. Richard thinks maybe you need psychological help because this isn't you." Mom had added her own comments. "Honey, I don't know what happened to you on that trip, but I don't like how you're talking to your sister. Claire has always been good to you. If you have financial or emotional problems, we can get help, but don't hurt the family." What hurt the most was reading the message from Dylan, my nephew. "Aunt Grace, my mom cried all week because of your message. I don't know what problems you have with her, but it's not right to make her suffer like this. I always thought you were more mature." Jenna had been more direct. "Frankly, Aunt Grace, I find this drama very immature. If you can't afford the life you want, the solution isn't to go into debt for an expensive cruise. My mom has always helped you out, and this is how you repay her." I read each message twice. Then I put my phone down and made myself a chamomile tea. It was incredible. They had managed to completely flip the situation. I, who had been humiliated for years, had become the bad guy in the story. I, who had endured contempt and cruel comments, was now the one attacking the family. On Saturday morning, while having breakfast with my children and Hope, who had stayed the night because she didn't want the magic to end just yet, I received a call from my mother. "Grace, we need to talk. Come to my house this afternoon. Claire will be here too. I'm not going to any meeting where I'm put on trial, Mom. Nobody is accusing you of anything, dear. We just want to understand what's going on with you. What's going on is that I've finally opened my eyes. Look, Grace, I don't know what they put in your head on that cruise, but you're hurting people who love you. Claire hasn't stopped crying since you got back." That's when I lost my patience. "Claire is crying? Seriously, Mom? Do you know what Claire wrote about me on Facebook? Do you know how she described me to her friends? I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm not interested in social media gossip." "It's not gossip, Mom. They're screenshots of comments where your favorite daughter called me an element, a parasite, and a failure, where she made fun of my children's achievements, where she told her friends I was a spinster with no life who needed to feel useful." There was a long silence. "Grace, you must have misunderstood something." "Misunderstood? I have the screenshots saved, Mom. I can show them to you. Even if Claire said something in a moment of anger, that doesn't justify you." "Justify me what, Mom? Spending my savings on my children? Giving myself the luxury of feeling important for the first time in my life?" I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling with rage. Hope, who had heard the whole conversation, came over and hugged me. "Honey, don't let them convince you that you're the problem. I've seen how they treat you for years. What you did was the right thing to do." That afternoon, I decided that if they wanted a family meeting, they were going to get one, but on my terms. I called Claire directly. "We need to talk. You, me, Mom, Richard. Tonight at my place. 8 o'clock. Grace, it's better if you come to my house. I have more space and—" "My house. Or we don't talk." "Fine, fine. We'll be there." I spent the afternoon preparing for the most important conversation of my life. I printed all the screenshots of Claire's comments. I organized photos from all the family events where my children and I had been treated like second-class citizens. I wrote down a list of all the financial favors and caretaking I had done for my family for 20 years. At 8 o'clock sharp, they arrived. Claire's eyes were swollen, as if she really had been crying all week. Mom looked worried but also annoyed. Richard seemed uncomfortable, as if he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the living room. It was the first time my family had visited my apartment in over 2 years. The first time Claire had sat on my humble furniture, breathed the air of my working-class life. "All right, Grace," Claire began with her patient older sister voice. "Explain to us what's bothering you so much. If there's something I did wrong, we can fix it. But this business of making a scene in the family group chat is not okay." I placed the first screenshot on the coffee table. "Does this seem okay to you?" Claire read her own comment calling me an element and a parasite. Her face turned red. "Grace, that was a long time ago, in a moment when I was upset about something." "Upset about what? For bringing my hungry children to your abundant table?" I put down the second screenshot. "And this? Where you make fun of Ethan's math medal." Richard looked at the image and then at his wife in surprise. "Claire, did you really write this?" "They were private comments with my friends. They weren't for Grace to see." "Exactly," I said. "They were your true feelings about me. What you really thought while you were pretending to be my loving sister." I laid all the screenshots on the table one by one, the comments mocking my children, describing our poverty as if it were a personal choice, laughing at our aspirations. Mom read everything in silence. When she finished, she looked pale. "Claire, how could you write these things about your sister?" "Mom, it was just venting privately. We all have moments where—" "No!" I exploded. "We don't all have moments where we humiliate our family in public. We don't all write that our nephews look like refugees. We don't all call the sister who sold her only asset to help us buy a house a failure." I reminded Claire, in front of Mom and Richard, of all the sacrifices I had made for her over 20 years. The money from the land she never paid back, the years of watching Dylan for free, the dozens of dresses I sewed for her without charging, all the times I supported her when she had problems with Richard, when she was sick, when she needed help with the kids. And now it turns out I'm the bad guy because I spent my own savings to give my children a decent vacation. Claire started to cry. "Grace, I know I've made mistakes, but you have to understand my position too. Sometimes it's frustrating that you always have needs, that we always have to be thinking about adapting everything so you can participate." "Adapting?" I interrupted her. Was serving my children bare bones adapting? It wasn't my intention to make them feel bad. And canceling my birthday party because I was acting strange? Was that not your intention either? Claire fell silent. "What party?" Mom asked. I told them about the call from the event hall, about the surprise party Claire had canceled because I hadn't answered her phone immediately. "Claire?" Mom said in a stern voice. "Is that true?" Grace was acting so weird. She wasn't answering my calls. "For 3 days," I shouted. "I didn't answer your phone for 3 days after reading how you described me online, and you canceled my birthday." Richard, who had been quiet all night, finally spoke. "Claire, this is very wrong. I didn't know we treated Grace like this." "You don't treat anyone like this, Richard," I said. "You've always been respectful to me. But your wife has been faking family affection while secretly considering me a burden." Mom stood up and came over to me. "Honey, I didn't know any of this. If I had known—" "Mom, you have your share of the blame too. You've always preferred Claire. You've always justified her actions. When she needed money for her wedding, you sold Dad's property. When I married Michael, you told me you couldn't afford such luxuries for me." Mom stayed quiet because she knew it was true. "And now that for the first time in my life I gave myself the luxury of feeling important, your first reaction was to scold me for hurting Claire?" I looked at my whole family sitting in my humble living room, surrounded by the evidence of 20 years of systematic contempt. "This is over," I told them with a calmness that surprised even me. "I'm not going to keep pretending we're a united family when we clearly are not. I'm not going to keep bringing my children to gatherings where they're treated like second-class citizens. I'm not going to keep spending my money on gifts for people who consider me a parasite." "Grace, please," Claire begged. "We can fix this. I can change. I can—" "Claire, for 20 years you had the chance to treat me with respect. You chose not to. Not until you saw me capable of spending $6,000 on a vacation without asking for your permission." I stood up and walked to the door. "The meeting is over. You can leave." Mom came over and tried to hug me. Honey, we can't end the family like this. The family isn't ending, Mom. It's being redefined. And in my new definition of family, there's only room for people who treat me with dignity. After they left, I stayed up late, sitting on my small balcony, watching the city lights. For the first time in 20 years, I felt completely free. Free from having to be grateful for crumbs of affection. Free from pretending that slights were just misunderstandings. Free from raising my children to accept being less important than their cousins. On Monday morning, a new life was going to begin. A life where Grace Morales put herself and her children first. A life where no one else was going to decide what we were worth. The next 2 months were the most peaceful of my life. No dramatic calls from Claire, no invitations to family gatherings where we'd have to feign normalcy, no constant pressure to keep the peace at the expense of my dignity. My children were thriving like I had never seen before. Ethan had gotten a part-time job at a stationery store near his high school, and for the first time, he spoke about his college plans with genuine confidence. Sophia had enrolled in a Saturday theater class, paid for with the money I no longer spent on obligatory family gifts. Hope came to dinner with us every Sunday and had become the grandmother my children never really had. It was amazing how a table for 4 could feel more like family than all those crowded dinners at Claire's house. I had returned to my sewing work with renewed energy. Without the constant emotional drain of family conflicts, I had more creativity, more patience, more drive to grow my small business. I had even started charging what my work was actually worth, without the inferiority complex that used to make me undercut my own prices. But the family hadn't given up so easily. The first attempt at reconciliation came in October, when Mom got the flu. Claire sent me a text. Grace, Mom is sick. She needs someone to take care of her. I can't because Richard has an important meeting with investors this week. Can you go? My response was simple. Of course, I'll go tomorrow. I took care of Mom for 4 days. I bought her medicine, made her soup, and stayed overnight at her house to monitor her fever. I did it because I love her, not because it was my obligation as the single daughter with no important commitments. When Mom recovered, Claire showed up with flowers and a box of expensive chocolates. Oh, Mommy, you gave me such a scare. Thank goodness Grace was able to take care of you. Where were you all week? Mom asked with a coolness I had never heard her direct at her favorite daughter before. I told you, Mommy. Richard had very important work commitments. Grace works too, Claire. And she has commitments too. But she was here. I saw Claire tense up. For the first time, Mom wasn't automatically justifying her absence. The second attempt came in November, when Dylan graduated from high school. I received a formal invitation via text. Family, we invite you to Dylan's graduation. It will be in the USC auditorium on Friday at 7 p.m. Dinner at our house afterward. I didn't respond immediately. The truth is, I wanted to go. Dylan, despite everything, was my nephew, and I had been an important part of his early years. But something made me suspect it wasn't a genuine invitation. I called Dylan directly. Hey, sweetie, congratulations on your graduation. Aunt Grace, thanks. Are you coming to the ceremony? I'd love to. Do you really want me there? Of course. You know you were like my second mom when I was little. I'd love for you to be there. I decided to go, but on my own terms. Ethan and Sophia would accompany me, and we would leave immediately after the ceremony. No family dinner where we'd have to pretend everything was fine. The graduation was beautiful. Dylan looked handsome in his cap and gown, and when he saw me in the auditorium, he waved and smiled genuinely. I was glad I went. After the ceremony, while the graduates were taking pictures with their families, Claire approached me. Grace, why don't you stay for dinner? I made your favorite casserole. Thanks, but we have plans. What plans could you possibly have on a Friday night? The question had that hint of contempt I knew so well. The implication that people like us couldn't have important plans on a Friday night. Hope invited us to the theater. We're going to see a play at the Amundsen. It was true. Hope had bought tickets for the 4 of us, and it was something we had planned for weeks. I watched Claire process the information. Her poor sister-in-law preferred to go to the theater than stay for her family dinner. Oh well, have fun. We said goodbye to Dylan with sincere hugs, and I left feeling good about having attended an important moment in my nephew's life without submitting to the toxic family dynamic. But the real blow came 3 weeks later, in a way I never anticipated. It was a Tuesday morning when Hope came to my house with an expression I had never seen on her. She looked shaken, confused, as if she had received disturbing news. "Grace, I need to tell you something. I ran into your neighbor Brenda at the grocery store yesterday. You know her?" Brenda lived in the building across the street and had always been gossipy, but relatively harmless. "Yes. What happened?" "She asked me if it was true that you were seriously ill." My blood ran cold. "What?" "She told me she'd heard that's why you spent all your savings on the cruise, because you knew you didn't have much time left and you wanted to enjoy it with your children." "Who told her that?" "According to her, a very elegant woman who came asking about you last week told her. A woman who said she was your sister. Claire had been in my neighborhood. Claire had been asking about me, making up stories about my health, spreading gossip among my neighbors." "What else did Brenda say?" "Well, that this woman, your supposed sister, was very worried because you didn't want to accept medical help from the family, that you had spent the treatment money on the trip, and now you were ashamed to tell the family you were sick." I sat down in my chair, trembling with rage. Claire had come to my neighborhood, to my territory, to invent lies about my health to make herself look like the concerned sister and me like the irresponsible sick person. "Did you say anything to Brenda?" "I told her you were the healthiest woman I knew, that we had been on the cruise together and you looked perfect. But Grace, people are already talking. At the store, at the bakery. Some even asked me if you needed financial help." I spent the rest of the day receiving visits from concerned neighbors. Mrs. Carmen, who sold vegetables on the corner, arrived with a bag of oranges. "So you can make juice and take care of yourself." Mr. Roberto from the auto shop offered to check my car for free, in case you need to go to the doctor often. The generosity of my neighbors moved me, but Claire's manipulation infuriated me. That night, after my children were asleep, I called her. "Claire, we need to talk." "Oh, Grace, I'm so glad you called. I've been so worried about you. How are you feeling?" "How am I feeling about what?" "Well, about your situation. I know you don't want to worry the family, but we can help. Richard knows some very good private doctors." "Claire, there is nothing wrong with me." "Grace, you don't have to pretend with me. I'm your sister. I understand that you wanted to give yourself that treat with the cruise, but now we have to be responsible and think about your treatment." "What treatment? I'm not sick." "Oh, little sister, pride won't feed you. If you spent the treatment money on the trip, we can get more. Health comes first." In that moment, I understood Claire's master play. She had invented an illness for me to explain my erratic behavior over the past few months, to justify why I had spent my savings so irresponsibly, to once again become the good, concerned sister, while I was cast as the mentally unstable person who had lost her mind. If I denied being sick, I would look like I was in denial. If I admitted any minor ailment, she would amplify it into a serious illness. It was a perfect trap. "Claire," I said in the calmest voice I could manage, "I want you to listen to this very carefully. I am not sick. I did not spend any treatment money. I spent my savings on my vacation because I wanted to. But Grace, and if you ever show up in my neighborhood again inventing stories about my health, if you ever use my neighbors to manipulate the situation again, I will take legal action against you for slander." "Legal action?" "Grace, I'm just worried about—" "You're not worried. You're trying to control me again. But it doesn't work anymore, Claire. I no longer care what you think of me, what you say about me, or how you try to manipulate the situation. Grace, I think you really need professional help. This isn't normal." "You know what's not normal? A 52-year-old woman going around her sister's neighborhood inventing gossip just to look good." I hung up the phone, but this time, instead of feeling hurt or betrayed, I felt relieved. Claire had shown how far she was willing to go to regain control over me. She had tried to use my reputation in the neighborhood, my relationships with my neighbors, even my imaginary health, as weapons in her personal war, and she had failed. Because I was no longer the same Grace who broke with every manipulation. I was the Grace who had learned to value herself, who had known respect on a cruise, who had seen her children shine when they were treated with dignity. I was the Grace who no longer needed anyone's approval to know her own worth. The next day, instead of hiding from the neighborhood gossip, I walked out with my head held high. I explained the truth to my neighbors, that I was perfectly healthy, that I had enjoyed a wonderful vacation with my children, and that my sister was having some trouble accepting that I could make my own decisions. Most people understood immediately. Some even laughed. "Oh, Mrs. Morales, Mrs. Carmen told me, we already knew you weren't sick. You've been glowing since you got back from your trip." Your sister looked more bitter than worried. That night, while having dinner with my children and Hope, Ethan asked me, "Mom, are we not going to see our aunt and uncle anymore? If you want to see them, you can. But we are no longer going to tolerate being treated poorly just to keep the family together." Sophia smiled. "I'd rather have a small family that respects us than a big family that ignores us." And with that wisdom from my children, I understood that I had won the most important war of my life, the war against the version of myself who believed she deserved crumbs. 6 months after the cruise, my life was completely different. Not because of the external changes, which had been minimal, but because of the internal transformation that had altered every aspect of my daily existence. My apartment was still the same. Small, but now filled with photos from the trip that reminded me daily that I deserved beautiful moments. My sewing work continued, but now I charged fair prices and chose my clients. I no longer accepted emergency jobs out of pity, nor did I sew Sweet 16 dresses for free to help families in need when my own family had been in need for years. But the most significant change was noticeable in the mornings. For the first time in decades, I woke up without that heavy feeling in my chest, without the anxiety of wondering what new favor would be asked of me today, what new way they would invent to make me feel guilty. My children had blossomed in ways I hadn't anticipated. Ethan, who had always been shy at social events, was now an active participant in his high school's debate club. "I learned that my opinion is worth just as much as anyone else's," he told me one afternoon, and those words filled me with a pride that couldn't be contained. Sophia had become selective with her friendships, distancing herself from classmates who treated her as a subordinate and getting closer to those who valued her intelligence and humor. "I don't accept friendship crumbs anymore, Mom," she said one day, using words I recognized as my own, but that she had made beautifully hers. Hope had officially become part of our family. Not the biological family, but the chosen family. The one you build with people who see you, value you, and respect you unconditionally. She had dinner with us 3 times a week, and on Sundays, we had established a tradition. We would cook together while listening to old Motown songs and telling each other stories about our lives. The first major test of my new self came in December, when Mom turned 71. I received the invitation from Claire via text. "Family, we're celebrating Mom's 71st birthday this Saturday at my house. Lunch at 3 p.m. Please RSVP." This time there was no doubt or internal debate. I replied immediately, "Happy early birthday to Mom. I'll bring her gift over on Friday afternoon. Have a lovely gathering." Claire called me that same night. "Grace, why aren't you coming to the lunch?" "Because I don't want to." The simplicity of my answer threw her off. "But it's Mom's birthday. She wants you to be there. If Mom wants to see me, she can visit me any day. In fact, she comes for dinner with me every Thursday." That was true. After the gossip incident, Mom had started visiting me regularly. At first, she came as if to supervise my mental state, but gradually our conversations had become more honest, more intimate. For the first time in my adult life, Mom asked me about my dreams, my fears, my plans, without immediately comparing me to Claire. "Grace, the family gets together to celebrate. Claire, 6 months ago, you described me as an element and a parasite on social media. 3 months ago, you invented a terminal illness for me to make yourself look like the concerned sister. We are not going to pretend now that we are a normal family. But I already apologized for all that." "No, Claire, you never apologized. You said they were misunderstandings, that I had exaggerated, that I needed professional help. And that is not an apology." "Fine, I'm apologizing now." "So what? Now it's too late. I no longer need your apology to be okay with myself." And it was true. That was the biggest difference between the old Grace and the new one. The old Grace would have accepted any apology, no matter how false, just to restore family peace. The new Grace had learned that some relationships aren't worth restoring. On Friday afternoon, I went to Mom's house with a gift I had chosen very carefully, a photo album I had put together with pictures of our best moments together. Photos from when I was a little girl and she was teaching me to bake. Photos from my middle school graduation, where the genuine pride on her face was clear. Photos of my young children with their grandmother, before family dynamics turned them into second-class citizens. Mom cried when she saw the album. "Oh, honey, this is beautiful. I didn't know you had all these photos saved. I've always treasured our good times, Mom. It's just that lately, it seemed like we had all forgotten they existed." We spent the afternoon drinking coffee and reminiscing. For the first time, Mom didn't mention Claire even once. She didn't compare my achievements to my sister's. Didn't suggest I should fix things with the family. When I was leaving, she hugged me tightly. "Grace, I want you to know that I'm proud of the woman you are. I always have been, but I guess I never told you enough. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot to me. And I want to apologize for letting them treat you poorly. I thought I was keeping the family peace, but I realized I was just maintaining the comfort of some at the expense of the pain of others." I left Mom's house feeling whole in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I didn't need my entire family to understand or accept me. It was enough that the people who truly mattered recognized my worth. On Saturday, while Claire celebrated Mom's birthday without us, Hope, my children, and I went to the Getty Center, then had lunch at a nice restaurant in Santa Monica, and ended the day watching the sunset from the pier. "You know what the best part of today is?" Sophia asked me as we walked. "What, sweetie?" "That no one is ignoring us. No one is making us feel like we're less important. We can just enjoy ourselves without asking for permission." Ethan nodded. "It's like we're VIP tourists in our own city." Hope laughed. "That's how you should feel every day, kids. Like the most important people in your own lives." That night, when we got home, I found a text from Dylan on my phone. "Aunt Grace, I really missed you at Grandma's birthday today. The food was good, but something was missing. I think it was you. Can we see each other soon? I'd like to talk." I replied immediately. "Of course, sweetie. Come over whenever you want. There will always be a place at my table for you." 2 days later, Dylan showed up at my door with a look I hadn't seen on his face since he was a little boy. Sad, confused, as if he were grappling with thoughts too heavy for his age. "Aunt Grace, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey. Why does my mom talk so badly about you when you're not around?" The question surprised me, although I should have expected that sooner or later Dylan would notice the inconsistencies in his mother's version of events. "What does she say about me?" "She says you went crazy after the cruise, that you spent money you didn't have, that you made up problems that didn't exist. But I knew you before the cruise, and you were always the kindest, most responsible aunt in the world. And what do you think?" "I think something doesn't add up. My mom is really angry, but I can't understand why. If you went on vacation with your money, what's the problem?" I explained to him, with careful but honest words, what had happened over the last few years. The Facebook comments, the humiliations at family gatherings, the years of being treated like a second-class citizen. Dylan listened in silence, and when I finished, he looked ashamed. "Aunt Grace, I never realized they treated you like that. I'm so sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetie. You've always been kind to me. But why didn't you ever say anything? Why did you put up with it for so long?" "Because I thought that was how you kept a family together. But I learned that a family that only stays together when someone agrees to be mistreated isn't really a family. It's a performance." Dylan was thoughtful for a moment. "So what happens now? Are we not a family anymore?" "You and I will always be family, sweetie. Real love isn't built on obligations or convenience. It's built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Can I still visit you? Without my mom finding out, I mean. You can visit me whenever you want, with or without your mom knowing. My door will always be open for you." In March, news came that confirmed I had made the right decisions. Hope told me she had run into Claire at the supermarket, and that Claire had asked her, "How is Grace's health?" "I told her you're perfect," Hope recounted, "that you look younger and happier than ever." And you know what she said back? "What?" She said, "That's a shame, because she was hoping that when you got over your crisis, You'd come back begging for forgiveness. We laughed together. But later I thought about those words. Claire was still waiting for my transformation to be temporary, for me to eventually return to the role of the submissive sister I had played for decades. She had no idea that the woman who got on that cruise no longer existed. That version of me had died somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, between the first shrimp cocktail I ate without having to thank anyone for it, and the last sunset I watched from my private balcony. In her place, a woman was born who knew her worth, who didn't negotiate her dignity, who had learned that self-love wasn't selfishness, but survival. One afternoon in April, while I was sewing a wedding dress, my most expensive and sought-after specialty, I received a call I didn't expect. It was Jenna, my niece. "Aunt Grace, I need to talk to you." Her voice sounded different, less arrogant, more vulnerable. "Tell me, honey. I'm having problems with Mark. Serious problems. And I don't know who to talk to." "What kind of problems?" He controls everything. The money, where I go, even which friends I can have. And my mom says that's normal, that husbands are supposed to protect their wives. But I feel suffocated." I had to resist laughing bitterly. Claire, who had allowed her husband to sideline me for years, was now normalizing the control her son-in-law exerted over her own daughter. "And what do you want to do?" "I don't know. But I remembered something you said the day you confronted my mom. You said that no one will value us if we don't value ourselves first. And I think I've never valued myself." Jenna came to visit me that same week. She brought her baby, who was now walking, and filled my apartment with his laughter. We talked for hours about boundaries, about self-worth, about the difference between being protected and being controlled. "Aunt Grace, how did you know it was time to say enough?" "When I realized I was teaching my children to accept crumbs of respect. When I understood that if I didn't defend myself, they would grow up thinking that was normal. I'm scared of being alone." "Jenna, you're already alone. Being with someone who doesn't respect you is the deepest loneliness there is. At least if you're truly on your own, you get to choose who you share your life with." I don't know if Jenna will make the difficult decisions she needs to make, but I planted the seeds, just as Claire had planted hers for years. The difference is that my seeds will grow toward freedom, not submission. As I write this, 8 months have passed since the cruise. 8 months since I decided I was worth more than the scraps from the family table. My life is smaller now, measured in the number of people, but it is infinitely richer, measured in the quality of love. The 4 of us have dinner together almost every night. Hope, my children, and I. We talk about our days, our dreams, our fears. No one has to pretend to be okay. No one has to compete for attention. No one has to be overly grateful. On Sundays, we continue to visit different places in Los Angeles like tourists in our own city. We've discovered markets, museums, parks, theaters, places that always existed but that we were never able to enjoy because we were too busy serving others. Ethan got accepted into UCLA to study civil engineering. Sophia is applying for a theater scholarship at a prestigious arts high school. Hope is taking watercolor painting classes at the local community center. And I am learning to play the guitar. At 59, I decided it's never too late to do something just because it makes you happy. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choices, if it was worth losing my biological family to gain my dignity. But then, I look at my children, who now walk tall and speak with confidence, who have learned that they deserve respect and genuine love, and I know that I didn't just make the right decisions for me. I made the right ones for the next generations. Because the day I decided I would no longer eat crumbs, I didn't just change my life, I changed the legacy I would leave for my children. And that legacy isn't money in the bank or inherited property. It's the unshakable certainty that they are worthy enough to demand to be treated with dignity. Always. Have you ever felt like you deserve more than what you're getting? Do you know someone who is living on crumbs of love while others eat the entire banquet? Tell me in the comments if this story reminded you of someone or if you've experienced something similar yourself. And if this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, we can continue to share these stories that might just reach someone who needs to hear that they deserve more than what they're receiving. Because sometimes, the story of one woman who decided to value herself can be the spark another person needs to ignite their own transformation.